300 inmates are shot without any form of trial, with the excuse that they tried to organize a mass breakout. Lenin dies in January 1924 after several months of illness. Stalin supervises the funeral. Stalin had been the General Secretary of the Central Committee since 1922. This allowed him to supervise all promotions and transfers of high-ranking party officials. This power was a key element in the battle among the Bolshevik leaders to decide who would take over Lenin's place. In July 1926, during the funeral of Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the Cheka, the Bolshevik leaders are all here, side by side, Stalin and Trotsky. Yet their brotherhood is but a facade. Stalin is moving in secret to isolate his most dangerous political opponent, Trotsky. In 1927, weakened, he is exiled. Stalin becomes Lenin's heir and carries on his cult. He relies on the support of a tight group of followers, including Molotov, Kaganovich, Orjonikidze, Kirov, Mikoyan, Voroshilov. As soon as the Bolsheviks came to power, the dictatorship of the party replaced the so-called dictatorship of the proletariat. But now begins the dictatorship of the General Secretary over the party. In 1928, Stalin begins with much fanfare the first 5 years plan, whose main goal is to accelerate the country's industrialisation. The objective of increasing production by 20% every year is unrealistic. Thus, they need to find people guilty of the mistakes and delays. A trial of the Industrial Party opens in 1930. The accused are engineers and technicians charged with sabotaging production. Wyszynski is the president of the court and leads the process according to a ritual that will become a standard for all Stalinian trials.
Рассмотрению специального присутствия подлежит дело контрреволюционной организации Союза инженерных организаций, так называемой промышленной партии.
The accused have been tortured and confess imaginary crimes.
В участии контрреволюционной организации инженерного центра позиции называвшейся промышленной партии.
Вредителем я себя признал.
В союзе с французским правительством и белыми мигрантами, что я полностью признаю себя виновным в свержении советской власти путем постепенной подготовки к кризису промышленности.
The trial is mentioned in all Soviet newspapers and highlights the myth of the saboteur working for a foreign power, a myth that can explain the regime's economic failures. Demonstrations asking for punishment take place.
Оглашается приговор специального присутствия по делу промпартии. Специальное присутствие Верховного суда СССР приговорило. Первое.
Wyczyński, a kind of Bolshevik Torquemada, declares,
к высшей мере наказания, к высшей мере социальной защиты, расстрелу, конфискации всего имущества. Окончательный и обжалованию не подлежит.
5 of the accused are sentenced to death. 3 are sent to camps. On top of forced industrialization, Stalin's economic strategy includes the collectivization of the lands. In a country where 80% of the population lives in the countryside, the money needed for industrialization can only be found through massive purchase of farming goods at an extremely low price. The purpose of collectivization is to gather farmers by force into state-owned farms, called kolkhozes. Maria Miklieva is deported along with her family when she's 8.
Collectivization began. Our village of Svobodny became a kolkhoz, and they started to get rid of the most wealthy people.
The Soviets decide to expropriate kulaks, farmers that are supposedly wealthy, yet often turn out to have a scant income. These kulaks are generally against the collectivization of the land.
The leaders called them kulaks and decided to evict them from their lands, so as to enable the villagers to build their new lives. My family was part of that category.
Ну и моя семья попала в этот разряд.
Brigades requisition the harvests and cattle.
They moved from house to house and took everything, up to the last seed. And they did the same for us. They took everything. They forced our family to certain starvation.
Kulaks are used as scapegoats. Within a very short time, tens of millions of farmers are forced to leave their lands.
I remember it. It was a beautiful sunny day. A man wearing bloomers and carrying a book or a newspaper came to our home and told us to get ready to leave. My mother asked, "Where to?" "Deportation." My mother started to scream and my sister to cry, and I grabbed the shelf with my dolls. I was 6 years old.
They didn't even tell my mother where they took her. They just took her, without even giving her time to change her clothes. She told me I was sitting next to the stove and they took me, dressed like that. She didn't take anything with her, and they brought her to Gulag. It was in March, and they threw her in the snow, in the middle of the forest.
My parents were very sad to see all the convoys, with entire families on board, going away while keeping their dead. One day, my mother and her friend had just milked the cows and decided to go to the road with a pot of milk to give some to those who still had young children. Then someone threw her a package and said, "Pretend it's yours." She didn't know what was in the package. Once home, my mother opened the package and discovered a dead baby. Its mother had probably given birth during transfer and wrapped the baby in a rag in the hope of giving it to someone to save it.